This is something that I have seen trending on social media that has actually happened to me that I just want to share my experience on. Every young girl should be educated and warned not to go to Dubai with the aim of finding rich men to take care of them or give them money. I recently lost one of my close friends, and I believe that her death is directly related to what we went through in Dubai. Since her death, I have been thinking about how different life would have been for me and her and all of us if we had not followed peer pressure into the unknown land. A few years ago, I went to a wedding and met an old schoolmate of mine. For the purposes of this confession, I'll call her Sylvia. Sylvia and I had been in the same dormitory in senior high school, and I knew her financial situation was very bad back then. In fact, it was so bad that she was always getting sacked for failure to pay her school fees. When I met Sylvia at the wedding, however, she was a completely different woman. She was driving a Mercedes-Benz, wore expensive clothing, and her skin tone had changed. She used to be very dark-skinned, but was very light-skinned now. Her appearance was just exquisite. I didn't recognize her at all. It was she who called me and asked me to join she and her friends at their table. After the wedding, we exchanged contacts and started communicating. We mostly just reminisced about the good old days, but we later got personal and discussed what we were both up to. She was an entrepreneur that owned multiple businesses and shops in town, and her work often has her traveling around the world. I'm not going to lie, I got jealous a little at her success and wished the same for myself. I wasn't working at the time despite graduating the university with good grades, and Sylvia, who wasn't that academically inclined, was making it big in life. I decided to take her as my mentor so I could learn from her. She began recommending books for me to read and telling me business ideas and secrets. We became like sisters and were inseparable from each other. In fact, she was more like my mother, protecting me and always looking out for my best interest. She got to know all about my past and current relationships and would often give me dating advice. One thing she always said that stuck with me is that I shouldn't always be emotional with relationships. I should be logical and use what I have to get what I want. When I was going through relationship issues, she introduced me to one of her rich friends who pampered and took care of me. But the relationship didn't last long. She even got me a few sugar daddies and would give me strategies on how to handle them and get them to spend money on me. I eventually had enough money to set up my own shop and had a small business running, but I wasn't even close to her level yet. She was a very good mentor. She would praise me when I did something right and criticize me when necessary. One day she told me that if I wanted to start making big money, I need to upgrade from the small sugar daddies to the international ones. This sounded good to my ears. After getting small tastes for money, I wanted more and more. Sylvia worked on my passports and visas for me, and before long, I was traveling the world. She would share my pictures with rich men abroad, and whenever one of them liked me, she would book a flight for us to meet up. She told me that it wasn't hookup or prostitutions, that we were just making friends that took care of us. Sometimes I would go to their house or meet them at a hotel. How long I stayed with them before returning depends on how much they were willing to pay. For those who paid top dollar, I could spend as long as a month or two with them. Most of these men were not good looking or attractive, but sometimes you just have to close your eyes and do what you have to do. Some also had some weird fetishes they wanted us to do, but none were too weird that I couldn't try. After all is said and done, there was always a big pile of cash waiting for me. Sylvia was also getting her own share of the money for arranging everything, but I never knew how much. One day, one of her friends called to inform her that they needed her services again. It was one of the biggest deals she had ever gotten, and she told me that if everything goes right, we were going to make more money than we have ever made before. There was to be a 3-day business conference in Dubai, and they needed some girls to keep the men company over the period. Sylvia quickly got her several girls together and began making preparations. As her protege, I was obviously number one on the list. We were mostly Ghanaian girls with a few girls from other African countries like Nigeria and Gambia. Sylvia briefed us and asked us to be on our best behavior. We were told not to be rude and just do whatever the men wanted. The day of the conference came and we were flown out and introduced to the men. I can tell you now that weekend was the worst 3 days of my life. There are no words to describe what my friends and I went through. There were 12 of us in total, and there were about 30 of the men. They would use you in both your holes and not stop, no matter how much you begged or screamed. Because they outnumbered us, they took turns on us and passed us around like we were nothing. At some point, I wanted to stop, but we had already done so many things, and I knew that I wouldn't get any of the money if I didn't see it through to the end. Around dawn, they started using us to fulfill their scat fantasies. 3 of us were dragged into the washroom and used as human water closets. This went on for all 3 days. Some of the things are too graphic to even describe there. I felt excrement in my throats for several days after that. The saddest part is that they laughed at us when we complained and just gave us money in the morning. There was nothing we could do but take it and go home. When I returned back to Ghana, I narrated my ordeal to Sylvia, who told me that it wasn't a big deal and I should just forget about it. I deleted her contact and never got in touch with her again. None of the things we had to go through was worth the money we got. Recently, one of the ladies I went to Dubai with died, and I attended her funeral. Listening to how she got sick and died, it's quite clear to me that the kind of things we did caught up with her. I am getting scared for my own health now. I just want to advise the young ladies not to compromise their values in the name of money. You will die eventually and leave the money behind.